Hello, mate. We're back from our tea break for the Englishman. Cognitive performance in athletes. It is that 1%. How can we help athletes find it?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's what we've sort of touched on already, isn't it? It's those data points, data like real life data, live data that we can trust, and giving people the access to that more freely. At the moment, by the sounds of things, it's obviously quite expensive, and it's going to be until we sort of work out what works, what doesn't. But another layer to that is in performance enhancing things that obviously are legal. So nootropics like Konquer, brilliant. Like I notice a difference. I feel like I don't need caffeine throughout my day anymore. It's quite ironic I'm having a coffee, but that's because I like coffee. But yeah, like yeah, Conquer's brilliant. It's these little, as we were saying, it's the small percentages that if you stack them up, becomes a larger percentage. So yeah, it's the avenues are endless on what you can explore, and there's a lot that we won't have explored yet. It's I think it's quite an untouched market, in quotations market. It's quite an untouched sort of area within sport, within us. I think it's in a very exciting time for performance in sport, as it always is. There's always the next thing, isn't it? It's the next thing that we're trying to do to gain an edge over our opponents. So yeah.
Well, it really is, because look at AI and what it's doing to the world and how that's going to impact sports. That's exactly where M2MMA is positioned. How do we integrate AI to firstly make combat sports safer, but also enhance the performance of our athletes by providing them with those data points you mentioned? Cognitive performance, as again, I really agree with that 1%. I've watched sport my whole life, and the greatest athletes of all time always are the calmest under pressure. They see the game before it's even happened. They see the punches before it's even happened. And I've always loved studying athletes, and again, to me, there's always that subsection, the one that's just a little bit above the rest. And someone like in tennis, like Novak Djokovic, I read a book of his a long time ago. It's called Serve to Win. It was actually about his diet and how he moved away from went gluten free, and how he attributed to that a lot of his upturn in success from a young athlete who was struggling with various different things in his matches to becoming arguably the greatest tennis player of all time. But also in that book, he talks about, yes, how specific he was around every little aspect of his nutrition to fuel his body. And he gave a great little, let's say, anecdote about how he described his body as being a Ferrari, and you would not put, your daily kind of oil in a Ferrari. And also, if you're competing against your Roger Federer, your Nadal, your Andy Murray, that 1%, that little bit of difference is what wins those matches. But he also talked about training his mind, his meditation routine, his yoga routine. Now, these are things we've heard about for centuries and perhaps thousands of years, how training your mind can deliver a new level of performance. But I think only now we can start to tap into what is those kind of practices actually doing in terms of how it is improving your cognitive performance. How does meditation improve it? And we can start to develop those protocols to, again, train athletes to a whole new level. And again, with AI, like how they can read these various data points, as we mentioned previously in discussion. This is such an exciting time for sports, for both safety and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, it's so it's mind blowing how powerful the mind is. Like when you start to look at some of these things, like meditation, but then you take a further step into positive affirmations, and you look at trying to train your brain without having to do anything physically. And what I mean by that is there was a study done, and this has been spoken about in a podcast by a much smarter person than me, but I'll try and relay the information as best I can. So it's there was a study done where they took a number of basketball players and they split them in half. Half the group actually practice shooting for a week, and then the other half of the group imagine themselves practicing shooting.
I've heard this, yeah.
Yeah, and then the group that imagined themselves practicing shooting, they then tested it, both the group together, and the group that didn't actually take any physical shots that week still improved. And so that study is to prove that just imagining yourself doing the activity can create the neurological pathways to make you better at doing the thing. So if you think about how powerful that is, that opens up doorways to so many different things. And just thinking positively about your day is gonna affect your day, and it's as simple as that as well. So we know about the placebo effect of drugs, right? So if you look at pharmaceuticals bringing out a new drug, they'll test the placebo effect of it, they'll test the actual effect of it, and we all know how that works, right? To put it simply, it's if you give someone a sugar pill and tell them it's going to fix them, it can fix them. Our bodies have the capabilities of fixing ourselves if we know it's under the right environment. You then take it into sport and you give people the right positive mindset, then that can have such an amazing effect on the athlete. And it's like you're talking about with Djokovic, talking about him being a Ferrari and putting the right sort of fuel in. It's the same thing. Like I think we've got to start getting into the right mindset around it, where you wouldn't want to affect your performance poorly by thinking poorly if you knew how much it could affect it. And I was definitely an athlete when I was playing who didn't think positively enough. I didn't back myself enough. I didn't envision myself doing the things I wanted to do enough. And that massively affected my performance. I could see it. And it's then drips into the nocebo effect. So you've got placebo and nocebo. A nocebo effect is obviously the opposite of the placebo effect. If you think about these things negatively enough and you're envisioning yourself failing enough, then you're creating the neurological pathways that are the negative neurological pathways, and then you're more likely to then fail. So it's two elements. Your brain is so powerful in that way, and there's loads of evidence to suggest that that's true as well. So I mean, it's staggering how many avenues you can go down with that, and we're only just really, I think, opening that can of worms.
I agree. That's one of the things that really fascinated me from the start about this project at M2MMA. Like, I've always loved psychology, and from competing for 14 years of professional golf, I think golf is right up there with the most psychologically demanding sports, simply because you have so much time to think in between each action. And it's something I did train, probably perhaps more than most, but maybe one of my regrets, I didn't do it more. I worked with a number of psychologists over the years, and one in particular I mentioned, you talk about neural rewiring. He described it as a guy called Chris Henry, and he works with the greatest snooker players on earth these days. And obviously snooker is another very fascinating sport with those fine margins, and again, maintaining your composure under pressure is really under the microscope. I just think it's such a huge point of game for athletes, and that's why I'm fascinated to discuss these topics and to see where we can go with this as an organisation, where we're putting into the forefront of our mission and work with people like Brain Dubai to find those extra 1%. It might be through your nutrition, it might be through meditation practices, it might be through new technology that you can integrate into your training protocols and so on. But you need that data. And again, we always hear these anecdotes, these great athletes doing amazing things, but actually if we can start to understand how they do it and how we can develop protocols for other, and it's not just athletes, for everybody to live a better life through thinking better and feeding their brain better and practicing things because the brain is everything we are. What really got me into psychology a long time ago was a book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And I literally picked it up at Paddington Station one day, like I was bored going through London, just randomly. And it's a great phrase he coined in that, saying, correct me if I don't get it wrong, but it's like, what you see is all there is. And I find that such a poignant term, because it's so true. We all view the world through our brains effectively, and they create our reality for us. So how we look after our brains should be the number one thing we all focus on. But as you say, we all go to the gym, we all train S&C, we sometimes watch our diet, but very few of us really focus on how we can train and look after our brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the major things that, like, as you say, it's so important. And I think something I learned recently is how powerful just having a single thought is. So if you have a single thought and you have that thought, if you continuously have that thought over time, and let's just say it's, for example, a negative thought about, I don't know, how your day's going to go. If you wake up every day and you think, oh, I'm not really feeling about today, I'm not feeling it today, and you think that enough, your brain will naturally, it will create that neurological pathway, and that will be the pathway that it uses most naturally, and it will become the easiest pathway to use. And so you create that connection, and you create that that habit, and that's how the habit is built. And then your brain, it doesn't distinguish between the negative and the positive. It's the quickest and easiest and what it's most used to, because that's then safe. So if you then do it enough every day, you're naturally just going to have that thought every time. And that's why you then build that habit every day. And you're waking up and you're having this negative thought loop. And so then, before you know it, that is your way of thinking. And I had to break out of that, because from everything that happened in my concussion recovery process, and everything I sort of had to go through. It's obviously like a reasonably traumatic experience. I ended up having quite a lot of negative thought loops and negative, every day waking up and just thinking about how, I suppose it's probably more nervous about how bad the day is going to be, because you don't know if you're going to have symptoms. And even after I cleared all my symptoms and got back to where I am now, I noticed in the last few months that I still had a lot of these negative, I naturally go into these negative thought loops. And I had to work quite hard I've worked really quite hard over the last couple of months to try and recreate new pathways. And it's as simple as these positive affirmations in the morning. And it sounds bonkers, but all you're doing is, as I explained, with those neurological pathways, the natural pathways that your brain wants to follow, you just create new ones. So you wake up in the morning and you look yourself in the mirror and you say, today's going to be a great day. And I know today's going to be a great day. And then all you're then doing is you're creating that new pathway, but also you're tricking your mind to then see all the positive things that happen throughout the day rather than the negative things. And then you look at it at the end of the day, you say the same thing, or you ask yourself the question, and then you can't help but just think about the positive things that happen throughout your day. Now, if you then take that into sport or performance, you can do the exact same thing. And you can do it with the skill set, or you can do it with the thought process around what you're doing within your game. If you go into your game and you're thinking about, oh, I don't want to make this mistake today. I don't want to be the guy who slices the kick off the tee when I'm going to get the 3 points to potentially win the game. And if you're just thinking about all the things that can go wrong, more than likely you're definitely going to affect your thought process in the moment of doing the action and doing the thing that you're nervous about. But you might actually physically change the way your body moves going up to take a kick, for example. If you then swap it around and do the opposite, you're going to put yourself in the best position to, first of all, perform under less stress, because you're feeling positive about the action. But also, as we know with the basketball shots, like if you're thinking about it positively enough, you're actually going to get better at doing the action without even doing the action. So, the avenues you can go down with this are just endless. And
I was going to say, I think
if you're an athlete,
I think we've got another whole episode we can do here just on this. I think you and I have a real shared passion for this. Before we go today, give me, if you're an athlete who's been concussed and perhaps you feeling like you're struggling with a lot of these negative thoughts, perhaps even a little depression, so let me rephrase that. If you're an athlete who has been concussed and you may be feeling some of the signs of depression, give me your number one thing you'd recommend that athlete to do.
So first of all, I'll give you a split answer. First of all, if you feel like you've got concussion, then you need to just not go anywhere near anything that can give you another concussion until those symptoms have gone. If you're coming back from concussion and you're feeling the aftermath, as I've sort of explained, where I've created these negative thought loops, it can be as simple as that. It's talking to yourself positively every day, and I mean it is really as simple as that. Every morning, standing in front of the mirror, looking yourself in the eyes, and you're talking to yourself as if you're someone else giving you the command. And the best way to think about it is you want to look at yourself and talk to yourself as if you're talking to someone, let's say a 10-year-old child who's having the issue you're having. How would you speak to them? What energy would you give them to motivate them? That's what you've got to do to yourself in the mirror. And if you do that 15 times in the morning, 15 times in the evening, you will change your mindset around that issue, whatever the issue is. And yeah, it's super powerful. I mean, you can go one step further with it, and that's, you can look into certain treatments like hypnotherapy. And hypnotherapy basically does that for you. So you'll have someone at the other end of a Zoom call, or if you do it in person, and they'll get you into a meditative state. And it sounds like all mumbo jumbo, but it's a proven science. It works, and it was a massive helper for me. But they'll essentially get you into this meditative state. Yeah, and they'll then talk to you about these positive things, and they'll get. Yeah.
Great advice. Anyway, I think we're running out of time now, so let's hang this up. But Barney, it was an absolute pleasure again to chat with you, and let's do it again, man. I think we touched on some more really interesting subjects there, especially around the issue of psychology and how athletes can both protect themselves and improve their performance. Cheers, mate.
Perfect. No worries. Thanks, mate. See you in a bit.